Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan. All these countries will receive innovative interceptor drones from Ukraine, expertise in managing their airspace, and further defense cooperation. Decade-long agreements have already been signed with Riyadh and Doha. There are plans, at the very least, for a similar agreement with the UAE. There may also be agreements with other countries that for now prefer to remain out of the spotlight. How does this change the way Kyiv is building new diplomatic ties with the Gulf countries? And what does it mean for Moscow? Let's break it down now. After the outbreak of hostilities in the Middle East, the Gulf monarchies realized they were unable to fend off massive attacks by Iranian drones using expensive air defense systems. There simply aren't enough missiles, and the cost is extremely high. That's why they decided to turn to Kyiv as a player who is already. For the fifth year in a row, they've been fighting off similar attacks. Ukraine immediately announced its readiness to support Middle Eastern countries, and President Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated that more than 200 specialists are already assisting states in the region. There are also reports of the first drones shot down by Ukrainians. In light of these tangible successes, Ukraine signed a strategic partnership agreement with Saudi Arabia and Qatar. The agreements provide for joint funding and the creation of weapons on the territory of the signatory countries, as well as cooperation in the energy sector.
We're talking about a 10-year partnership. We have already signed the corresponding agreement with Saudi Arabia and concluded a similar 10-year agreement with Qatar. Over these 10 years, we will be engaged in joint production, building factories, and setting up production lines, both in Ukraine and in these countries. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, president of Ukraine, during a conversation with journalists.
Ukraine's production capacity already allows the country to send between 5,000 and 10,000 interceptor drones to the Middle East. A representative of one of the companies manufacturing these drones told The Telegraph that this will not affect domestic deliveries. As for how the Gulf countries could help Kyiv, the answer is simple. In January, Saudi Arabia placed an order in the U.S. for 730 modern interceptors worth $9 billion. These missiles are used in Patriot systems to destroy ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as aircraft, which is extremely necessary for Kyiv given the Russian war against Ukraine.
Ukraine is indeed gradually reaching a new level of quality, a new level of military, technical, and defense cooperation with Middle Eastern countries. And we're talking about it's no longer just about traditional arms deliveries or individual contracts like it was in the 2000s. A more complex model of cooperation is taking shape, in which Ukraine is becoming not just a supplier, but a partner in exchanging combat experience, technologies, and solutions that have been tested in high-intensity warfare.
Ukrainian interceptor drones and the experience of military personnel who advise partners on their use have become a strategic resource for the state, according to Ukrainian Deputy Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha. According to him, Kyiv possesses unique military capabilities that, in essence, serve as geopolitical tools for Kyiv.
We offered our partners in the Gulf states not just words of solidarity and support, but concrete security solutions. And this is valued. This works. And it is not only about the war, but also about our role in shaping security and the agenda from Europe to the Middle East. There is a clear understanding of Ukraine's importance and its role, and our agency and subjectivity are becoming more distinct and filled with concrete content. Andriy Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, in an interview with Ukrinform.
In all this interaction between Ukraine and the Gulf countries, it's not just cooperation that's visible, but a new perception of reality. Until now, the Arab countries of the Persian Gulf have maintained neutrality regarding Russia's war against Ukraine. In Arabic, there are at least 5 synonyms, words like invasion, but not a single one of them gained traction in the regional media. Now, these same countries were the first to reach out to Kyiv when Iranian shads started flying in their skies. Essentially, now, with U.S.-brokered negotiations having made little progress in recent months, Ukraine could rely on new partners in this matter.
Now, as Iran, an ally of Russia, is launching attacks on the Gulf countries, and with the possibility of Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates entering the war, the region has begun to rethink its approach to its security system. In practice, this means changes in relations with Ukraine. This challenging time is opening up new windows of opportunity for Ukraine. from a BBC News Russian service publication.
Russia's position on this issue is also important. If in the past Moscow had partnership or even friendly relations with a number of countries in the region, and even in December 2023 Putin traveled to Riyadh on a working visit, now the Kremlin is essentially putting an end to these relationships by helping Iran. Thanks to satellite intelligence and even the transfer of weapons from Russia, Tehran is striking at the critical civilian and military infrastructure of the countries in the region. It's noteworthy that when choosing between partnership with countries that possess enormous resources in the form of oil and finances, Putin chose the dictatorial regime of the Ayatollahs in Iran, which, at this moment, happens to be willing to provide Moscow with military support in the war against Ukraine.
I think Russia is helping the Iranians out of its own interests, and I don't believe it. I know that they share information. We know that if they take pictures once, that's preparation. If they take pictures a second time, it's like a simulation. And the third time means that in a day or two, they'll launch a strike. That's what we know. So if I get information from my intelligence that they're taking pictures of American bases, that's the answer right there. Are they helping the Iranians? Of course. By how much? 100%.
And while in the Middle East they've only just realized how important Ukrainian experience and innovation are, Europe continues to synchronize its military capabilities with Kyiv. On March 27th, the head of Lithuania's defense ministry visited Ukraine and got acquainted with the work of the so-called small air defense. His Ukrainian counterpart, Mikhailo Fedorov, clearly demonstrated how new technologies are improving the effectiveness of air defense.
They demonstrated the operation of autonomous AI-powered anti-aircraft turrets capable of intercepting missiles and attack drones, as well as interceptor drones as a key element of layered air defense. In February, a record number of over 10,000 enemy fixed-wing UAVs, including Shahed and Gerbera, were shot down by interceptor drones. Mikhailo Fedorov, Minister of Defense of Ukraine, on Facebook.
Leaders of the Baltic region countries are showing particular interest in cooperating with Ukraine to expand the capabilities of their air defense systems. They called for additional cooperation at the meeting of the Joint Expeditionary Force in Helsinki. This is a military coalition led by the United Kingdom. In total, it includes 10 Northern European countries. And President Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated that Kyiv is also ready to join this alliance.
We should. Remember, this is not a one-sided process. After all, for example, Ukraine is already providing assistance to other countries, particularly in the field of unmanned aerial vehicles. They have innovations and technologies that no other country possesses. In this way, it also helps ensure the security of other countries.
So, what do we have as a result? Europe is openly strengthening its cooperation with Ukraine, understanding that it is here where solutions to modern threats are being developed. Against the backdrop of Russian aggression, countries are coming together more closely, technologically, militarily, and politically. At the same time, Moscow is rapidly slipping into isolation under Putin's leadership. Old markets are closing, partners are distancing themselves, and the reality on the front lines remains unchanged. Tens of thousands have died for the sake of ruined towns and villages the world had never even heard of before.
Subscribe to UATV English and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.